Today on Locked On Red Wings, the slide continues with another pitiful performance, this time in Minnesota against the Wild.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. I am a podcast producer for the daily JAWWJ News Radio podcast, while Scotty's a host over at Locked On Tigers, as well as a freelance journalist for the Detroit News. And Scotty, things aren't great in Red Wings land as the Red Wings fall 6-3 against the Minnesota Wild. And, man, I just don't know. It's getting to a point now, Scotty, where I don't know what to say to the listeners anymore with regards to this.
You ever see the movie Groundhog Day?
Yes, I have, and I know exactly where you're going with this.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, tell the people, because there's probably
man. It feels like every game we come on here and say the same stuff like this. It's one thing to have a rut that your team goes through, and it is. They're I don't know, finding different ways to lose, or there's something that you want to point out as to why they are struggling, or something along those lines. This is straight up just every game we come on here and say the same thing, right? Like every game we come on here and we go, well, the defense wasn't very good. The goaltending really got left out to dry. They got no help by the defense. Neither were good. And in the third period, they gave up a bleep ton of goals. That has been a constant throughout this entire thing. The only inconsistency amongst this from game to game has been the offensive performance. Sometimes they score enough to where they can give up a ton of goals in the third and still hold on. And sometimes they have a close game in the third, or a tie even in tonight's case in the third. And then they end up losing by 3. And at one point we're down 4. Like that's, that, you know what I mean? Like it's just, or I guess maybe they just staggered it and we're only ever down 3, but still, like, point remains, man. Like it's really just same old stuff, different day. Like is really what this is starting to feel like, and it's very frustrating. I think that falls pretty heavily on coaching, to be honest with you. Obviously, the players are the ones out there, and they're the ones that have to execute said game plan. And so it certainly falls very heavily on everybody that's a part of this' shoulders, right? I don't I feel like a lot of people in today's sports climate just want to find like one person who's at fault for everything, and that's very rarely true. This is definitely a group effort of of struggling lately. This is not all on one individual. But I think it's really hard not to take a look at the at coaching lately, just because of the fact that they lose in the exact same way every single game.
Well said. Honestly, I could say that's the recap of the episode and we could move on, but we got to talk for 30 minutes. So we have to talk about individual performances and whatnot. And, you know, we didn't lead it off the way we normally would. Speaking of which, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more right now. No, it's my fault. I should have done it right off the bat. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 bucks if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockdown to get started. And in an extension of that, and how we didn't really lead the episode off the way we normally would. Normally, I'd ask you, Scotty, like, what's your one word? Well, my one word, I knew it from this moment that the Wild scored that fourth goal to make it 4-2, was exasperated. And it's exasperated because of everything that you just said in regards to this hockey team. You know, we were optimistic that with a 3-day break, this team would, you know, anyone who's fostering bumps and bruises may be able to, you know, take their foot off the pedal and relax and come back a bit healthier. We knew there were still injury issues. Obviously, Lyon and Husso were still hurt. We knew coming into the game that Petrie, Mata, and Christian Fischer and Klim Kostin were all out. Christian Fischer added to the IR as well a couple days ago now. So, but that's not an excuse. I mean, especially when this team is sliding. You still got to find ways to win. And yeah, we talked about it yesterday. This Minnesota Wild team is playing really hot. Coming into the game, they've won 10 of their last 13, 10-3 in their last 13. That's incredible. But I mean, despite that, this team, you can't use it as an excuse, and you cannot continually use it as an excuse. It's a reality. It's a part of the game. But like you said, Scotty, it is a complete team effort, and it starts at the top with the coaching. And right now, every single level of this team is not getting it done, apart from one man, and that man's name is Patrick Kane. Patrick Kane's getting it done, and Alex DeBrincat had 2 points in this game as well. And like, that's cool, right? Like, I'm pumped up that Patrick Kane's got a 4-game goal streak right now. I'm pumped up that he's a point per game for the Detroit Red Wings. I'm happy that connection with Alex DeBrincat is alive and well, but it can't just be them. Like, it literally cannot be just the top line, because right now, through this rough stretch, the Kane, DeBrincat, whoever is centering them, right now it's been Larkin since he's come back, has been the only line that has gone out there and consistently had chances and make things happen and scored goals. It cannot continue to be this way, or else this team is never gonna win any, like, what's the word? Any substantial, that's what I'm looking for, substantial number of hockey games in a row. And you're quickly finding yourself falling out of the playoff race. Like we talked about it, right? This is a really tight Atlantic division, and you cannot afford to go on these giant losing skids. And yeah, I know it's probably going to be balanced out in the end by the giant winning streaks they go on, but the highs are so high with this team and the lows are so low with this team that it just becomes exasperating to watch. And this game was no exception. I won't go as far as to say it was the worst game of the season, because I feel like I have a penchant of saying that when they play a bad game, that was the worst game of the season. But it was up there. It was a really bad hockey game. They had played a really good 15 minutes in the first period. That was when I thought they were at their peak. But the rest of the 45 minutes of this hockey game, they were on their heels. They were forcing passes that weren't there, and they were just committing unforced turnover after unforced turnover, giving the Wild opportunities they shouldn't have had.
Yeah, man. My word is just like repeat, I guess, for starters. If that wasn't clear at the beginning.
Groundhog.
Right. Yeah. Was it Max we talked about it with? We talked about it relatively recently, about this team's inability to just get the puck out of their own zone. And I feel like this game was the highlighter of that take, right? Like this was, you watch this game, this team refused to get the puck out of their defensive zone. They could not do it. They physically could not do it. So many of the goals were because like the Wings had possession in their own zone, could not get the puck across the blue line consistently throughout this entire game. If it wasn't goals, it was high danger opportunities. It was just longer possessions that led to more high danger opportunities. Like it was so blatantly obvious that this team, under nearly any circumstance in the second and third period, literally could not get the puck out of the defensive zone. It was remarkable in the worst connotation. And I think that is, I think it must have been Boltman, but somebody, I know we had a conversation about that relatively recently, about how somebody brought that up, and it was remarkable to me how much they struggled with that in this hockey game, and how much the Wild just completely took advantage of that giant hole in the Red Wings game.
Yeah. It's
because, like, you want to talk about turnovers, like I guess they are, right? Like they are, like technically they are turnovers, but I mean, it was that specifically. It was all just an inability to clear the freaking puck. Yeah.
I mean, that's really it. I mean, the damning stat of this game is the Wild had 11 takeaways and the Red Wings had 3. It's just, we're going to take a quick break, Scotty. Give me a minute to recoup my thoughts as I serenade the people with today's sponsor. And then when we come back, we'll talk individual performances, because And individual performance doesn't mean necessarily people in particular, but like lines too, because line 2 was really bad in this game. The Raymond Comfer Fabry line was awful. And there's a lot of conversation that needs to be had about the defense in this game. There was only so much you could do. I understand that. And of course, goaltending as well. We'll talk about all that in segments 2 and 3, as well as give you a World Junior Championship update as Team Germany did something they had never done before. So stay tuned to segments 2 and 3 of Locked On Red Wings. It's almost the halfway point in the Red Wings season, and regardless of where we are in the current standings, I want to remind you that you can win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is the number one choice for daily fantasy sports, and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. All you need to do is pick whether or not studs like McDavid, Ovechkin, Crosby, or McKinnon, or heck, did you see that goal Luke Hughes scored to like pretty much will the Devils to a victory over the Blue Jackets? That was incredible. We'll record more or less than their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more in a given game. To win 100 times bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me, Red Wings fans. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention, and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use promo code LOCKDOWNNHL and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. All right, Scotty, where do you want to lead off first? Do you want to talk the second line? Do you want to talk defense? Do you want to talk goaltending? I'll let you choose.
Wow. You're really just letting me have what an honor it is.
Your
man.
best of the worst, if you will.
Goodness. I think I think we should just do defense and goaltending, and we can kind of almost lump them in together and talk about it all at once like we usually do. This was a game where, I mean, certainly no game in which you give up 6 goals is going to be considered a great game in net. But again, like we talked about earlier, man, like there was so many takeaways in your own zone that just set you up for failure and gave up extremely high danger opportunities. And again, that's not me making an excuse. As we say all the time, they can both be bad. Like they can, I promise it's possible. Like both the defense and the goaltending can both struggle on the same night. It doesn't all have to be one or the other, like I said earlier. But this defense was, I think it was horrific. They really, really struggled mightily. And again, as I said in the beginning, I guess I'm kind of just talking in circles already. Something needs to change. Some adjustment needs to be made. Some game plan needs to be shifted, etc. Because this is just constant giving up high danger opportunities in your own zone.
Yeah, it was really, really, really bad at times. I mean, James Reimer looked fantastic through the first 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Like he was the reason that the Red Wings were only down 2-1. Red Wings continually, like we've said many times before, give up too many odd man rushes off bad pinches, things of that nature, just missing guys who are sneaking out behind them. Next thing you know, it's bam, it's like 4-4, like the Sharks game. That was really Husso in it, obviously. But in this game, James Reimer, he made big saves. And we've been critical of James Reimer. We talked about how we know who our odd man goalie out is. And James Reimer through the first 40 was fantastic. And I feel like this was just one of those situations where eventually they broke him because they just kept, especially in the third period, after the Red Wings came, the Red Wings came out in the third period looking like a team that wanted to come back. They tied the game up on the power play off a beautiful shot from Alex DeBrincat, fed from Comfer and Ghost. Yeah. But right after that, like the wheels came back off again. They just, too many mistakes, too many giveaways. That goal by Ryan Hartman, I mean, I get so frustrated even thinking about that because the Red Wings were on the cusp of taking the lead at that moment. Comfer couldn't bury
it. In the third period. It was a tie game in the third period, dog. I know.
A
2-2 hockey game in the third.
I mean, I really don't want to do the thing where I go down every single goal again and like talk about what went wrong, but I almost feel like I have to. Like, okay, first of all, you have your set D pairs in the first, like going into the game, but for whatever reason, Lalone decides to start Sherratt and Hull together, and that was an abysmal decision because 30 seconds in the game, Hull, who has been awful all season long, and I'm just going to flat out say it, a guy who I defended and was hopeful that, oh man, maybe this guy outside of the Toronto media market and getting better deployments will turn out to be better. No, he's getting such easy deployments comparative to his compatriots, like, I don't know why I said compatriots, teammates like Sider and Wallman still cannot put together a decent performance. And he and Sherratt go out there, and Sherratt, who's had a decent season, but I don't understand why they started the game, make an awful turnover. Wallman and Sider come on the ice. Wallman gets collided with Perron. Wallman's the only one back. 2-on-1 goal, 30 seconds in. What are we doing? Because that wasn't even the pair for the game. So why was that the pair they started at the puck drop? I don't get it. And then Marcus Johansson, Raymond, part of the second line problems that this team just had. Lucas Raymond all game was just abysmal. This might have been his worst game of the season because he kept trying to make passes that just weren't there, and this was no exception. He crosses the blue line, drops the puck back to no one. The Wild pick it up, go back down the other end, and Ryan Hartman or Marcus Johansson finds Ryan Hartman on the 3-on-2 or 3-on-1, whatever it was at that point, to bury the puck. I mean, and then the Marcus Foligno, we're back to where I started, right? The thing that set me off on this monologue in the first place. The Red Wings tied it 2-2. They have a scramble in net. All the forwards are down low. They're all just falling over each other, trying to bury this puck in the slot. They can't do it. The Wild break out. They come back down the ice, and Marcus Foligno buries the puck. And Edvinsson and Justin Hull got lost in the sauce out there in the defensive zone. Austin Zarnik ended up having to be the guy standing in front of the net, trying to protect James Reimer and defend James Reimer. And Zarnik's not a defenseman. He can't outmuscle Marcus Foligno. And it's 3-2. And then that's where the floodgates open, right? Right after that, they bring the pressure again. The Wings crash again. Johansson puts one right between Reimer's legs. And then
yeah. Word, dude. Yeah, I mean, you kind of talked about it there. That second line obviously had a really rough night.
They're like -4, dude. They were -4.
Yeah, -4 in a night ain't too pretty. And then all of the defensive, I think 2/3 of the D group were all -2. So that was kind of passed around a little bit more. But yeah, man, I mean, we've talked so much about how this team's the identity that we think, and I don't know when is the correct time to start questioning that, but like the identity that we think this team wants to take is that low event, good team defense hockey. And during this skid, it has been anything but that. And you've just had to, like, the only games you win are when you outscore your opponents. Like, they're just playing so off of what we thought going into the year that, and early on this season, and like, still think that they want their identity to be. And that includes, and we try to say this as loud as we can, like that very much includes defensive play by forwards, right? There's like that misconception that, the team's defense only falls on the defenseman. And while I'm not, stepping in front of any heat that the defensemen take, because it was a bad game for them too, this is again a group effort. This was a brutal defensive performance. And the second line is obviously a very easy line to point to.
Yeah, and like let's be fair too, right? Like the defense is going through it right now. I mean, you've lost both
injuries left and right.
Yeah, you've lost two of your everyday defensemen on the back end, in Petrie and Mata. And I mean, say what you will about this defense, but like Petrie and Sherratt have found good chemistry. Mata's a very a steady defenseman.
You're right. But let me put it to you this way.
I'm not making excuses.
No. I know you're not. If I don't know, the Boston Bruins lost their 6th/7th D-man and their 3rd/4th D-man in the same game, but everyone else on the blue line was healthy, and they started giving up 6 goals a night. Do you think that anybody over there would just be like, well, they're going through it? Like, no. You know what I mean? Like, at the end of the day, this is something that every single team in hockey goes through, is my point. And Petrie, to your point, has had a fine year. He's had a better year than I think people expected. Him and Sherratt next to each other have been more solid than I certainly anticipated, and it is clearly being felt by the team. I'm not trying to say it's not, but this is hockey. Like, yes, people are hurt, but it's not. They're not your like perennial top line, like biggest difference makers. And it doesn't feel like, to me, and I know, again, you agree with me, is like, it's not a good enough excuse to justify what's happening out there on a night to night.
Right. And for me, it's more about the pairing decisions that they've made in lieu of the injuries. Like, why are we pairing Justin Hall with Simon Edvinsson? Like, Justin Hall has been struggling all season long, and you're going to pair him with a rookie? Like, I don't get that decision.
Not even something we really considered.
I'm about to say something that I didn't think I would ever say, that I don't know why they didn't pair Ben Sherratt with Simon Edvinsson.
Yeah, that's also what we said. What was that, yesterday, 2 days ago? Yeah.
And I mean, it's so much easier said than done, right? The grass is always greener on the other side. Simon Edvinsson, for what it's worth, didn't look like he had the greatest game in the world either, I don't think. And he and Hull were definitely given like very good deployments in this game. A lot more offensive zone starts than defensive zone starts, especially, when compared to guys like Wollman and Sider, who we should talk about in segment 3. We shouldn't just brush past them either. But it's one of those situations where this team is just, everything is going wrong for them right now. And there's only one way to stop the bleeding, and that's coaching. And coaching has not stepped up to the plate right now to have stopped it. And like, even when saying that, I think about like, okay, just the goaltending situation. Like, everything is going wrong right now. Everything is going wrong right now, and somebody or something has got to step up to stop the bleeding.
Agreed, but and I know we got to get to a break here, but like, the thing about the goaltending situation is it wasn't sunshine and rainbows when they were all 3 healthy, though.
Right.
Like, that's not one where it's like, oh man, they're like, even if you disagree on what I said, a minute or two ago about the blue line and the forwards, and how much we're missing those players defensively, the goaltending wasn't doing very well when everyone was healthy. So like, yes, it's obviously a tough situation to be in now that 2 of your 3 are hurt, but that hasn't mattered. That's been consistent all year, in disregarding health. So it's yeah, man, just
wasting.
When it rains, it pours.
Just wasting an incredible comeback story in Patrick Kane. This man joined a Red Wings team that was on the cusp of breaking a playoff drought. At least at the time, it looked that way. Not saying like we're going to do it any moment, but a team that was hot. He joined the team to make it better. He's joined the team. He's been better than anybody thought he would coming off hip resurfacing surgery, ourselves included. And this team at that very moment just crumbled. And yes, injuries have been a part of it. The schedule's been tough. But like we said at the start, you can't keep making excuses. Everything's bad right now, except for Kane and DeBrincat, and something has got to fix it. Something's got to step up. We're way overdue for a break. When we come back, we got to talk about Wollman and Sider. After that, we'll get to the World Junior Championship. Stay tuned. Segment 3 of Locked On Red Wings. As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets and with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you're thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in the action. I know this ad is NFL-centric, Scotty, but did I see I think I saw today, watching World Junior Championships between games, they were talking a little bit of NBA, and I believe I saw that on FanDuel, the Pistons are plus 10,000 odds to never win a game for the rest of the season.
Yes, you can bet on the Pistons to lose out. That is now available.
Which, you want to say that just process of elimination. They're going to get a win eventually, but they certainly
Dude,
aren't
that I
playing
tweeted
like
that
it.
a week ago. One of my friends was like, "Dude, they have to win eventually," and my response was, "They don't actually. They
They
don't."
don't actually have to win. So get on that bet. Give yourself an opportunity to win some big money. So visit FanDuel.com/lockdown and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. At least we're not the Pistons. At least we're not the Pistons. All right. Segment 3, Lockdown Red Wings podcast. Scotty, let's talk about Jake Wallman and Moritz Seider. We talked a little bit about them last week, and since then, not a whole heck of a lot has changed. They're still kind of been the forefront of conversation on social media. I will say some people saying that Moritz Seider has regressed, and they'll look at this game and see a couple brutal turnovers by both Seider and Wallman, and the fact that they are both, I believe, -2 in this game, and go, see, they suck. And yeah, they didn't necessarily look great out there at moments, but this comes down to it again, where I think coaching has a lot to do with it. And I would love to get into this as a bigger topic tomorrow, maybe if we have time, Scotty. But the Jake Wallman, Moritz Seider deployment situation is wild to me. And there was a graphic that was going around social media the other day that just showcased how much more difficult deployments that Seider and Wallman get in the NHL compared to any other defensive pairing playing 300 plus minutes so far this season. They were staunchly like 10%, 20% better than any other defenseman or defensive pairing when it comes to their strength of competition. They are almost exclusively deployed at the start of their shifts in the defensive zone and almost exclusively deployed against top lines. Other D pairings, other top pair D pairings in the NHL don't get that tough of a deployment. And it's increasingly frustrating when you have two defensemen who are so good in the offensive zone getting only defensive zone deployments. And some people will then say, of course, well, if they're really that good, they'll get out of the defensive zone. But when you're getting your shifts started in the defensive zone and getting pulled off the ice and then going back on the ice in the defensive zone, it's really hard to generate good offense. They didn't have a great game. I won't try and say they will, but their play has not been nearly as bad as people think it has when you take into context the amount of responsibility that's been put on their shoulders. And that is something I will continue to defend all season long. The strength of competition that this pair has been getting game in and game out has been ridiculous. They don't get any easy matchups. Moritz Seider himself played 25 minutes of ice time in this hockey game. And for one, I think it shows how little faith that Derek Lalonde has in any other defensive pairing, that they're only putting Wallman and Seider out in their difficult decisions.
That's mostly what it says.
But also give them a break too. Like every once in a while, give them a favorable matchup. Give them a matchup in the offensive zone. Like they are too good offensively to just pigeonhole them to playing in the defensive zone. Also, I don't know if they're good enough defensively to continue to just do that, but they're also the best we have defensively in comparison to what we got. They're getting the short end of the stick on every single matchup. For the love of God, Derek Lalonde, I am begging you, get them out of the defensive zone to start their shifts. Like I know it's going to get worse from there, right? And then, okay, you're having Ben Sherratt and Jeff Petrie in there, right? Like that's the other side. But the fact of the matter is they're playing so much and starting so much in their own zone. It's like they're not even given a chance to do anything with the puck, which can't also serve to help you. Like not having them in the offensive zone can also only serve to hurt you.
It's a really fascinating conversation. And like you said, I mean, I think there's definitely a broader conversation to be had there as well. That graphic was super fascinating. I think the discourse around it is incredibly fascinating. I mean, just look at, like you said, you can look at tonight, Seider with 25 minutes. I think Wallman was second on the team with like 21 or 22. And seeing that big of a gap between the two of them and still having both of them lead the team is just like yet another example of that, right? Yeah, man, like the Seider is just, and again, like you look at the blue line and I mean, I would rather have Moritz Seider on the ice than anybody else on our blue line, right? Like it's tough. It's a very fine line to walk, and obviously when to deploy them situationally when they take the ice is certainly something that can be adjusted and somewhat more measured than what it clearly has been so far this season. It's really fascinating to me that, like, I don't know. I'm not going to complain about, like, clearly the best defenseman on the team getting the most minutes. It's just, again, it really just comes down to deployment.
In this hockey game, Scotty, at 5-on-5, Moritz Seider and Jake Woolman had 5 defensive zone shift starts each, 3 neutral zone shift starts, 0 offensive zone shift starts.
That's wild. That's unbelievable.
And then 13 and 14 on the fly, because in reality, most of your shifts are going to start on the fly.
For sure.
And I understand it, right? Like, they're your best defensemen. You want them out there in the toughest situations. But at the same time, like, they're also your best offensively in the offensive zone outside of, like, Shane Gostisbehere. They work so well. And I've broke it down why they work so well in the offensive zone. To not give them any offensive zone shift starts is insane. To have them out there struggling in the defensive zone, doing their best to try and keep this game close. And then as soon as the puck gets out of the zone, have to come off the ice to put Edvinsson and Justin Holl out there or Sherratt out there is baffling. And Ben Sherratt actually offensively has looked pretty good the last few games. I'm not going to take that away from him. But Simon Edvinsson and Justin Holl led the team on offensive zone shift starts with 3 each. I just do not get it. Oh, and for the record, despite the fact that Moritz Seider and Jake Woolman had 0 offensive shift starts and 5 defensive shift starts, they both led the team in expected goals for percentage at 5-on-5. 57 and 52. They were both relative 25% for Moritz Seider and Jake Woolman. I will not take any Moritz Seider slander. Hope I didn't rumble my mic too much, yelling at a slam on the table.
You sounded pretty good on my end.
I'm just so fed up with the deployment, and I don't know the solution. I don't, because it's one of those situations where they're your best on the offense side of the puck and you're your best on your defensive side of the puck. So what do you want to do? Where is it more valuable to the team to have them? But at the same time, it's just like, put them in favorable situations, especially when you're down. When you want to tie this game up, stop putting them in the defensive zone, because now you're trying to tie the game up. Put them in the offensive zone. Do it, Derek. So fed up with it. This team is not good enough. I can keep going. I stopped there to give you a second to interject.
Was that what that was for?
That was what that was for. This team is not good enough. I understand that Derek Lalonde is trying to implement a style similar to the Tampa Bay Lightning. I get that. The Tampa Bay Lightning have had the success that they've had in part because of the style they play. But that goes hand in hand with the talent that roster has. And this roster does not have the same caliber of talent as the Tampa Bay Lightning. They have the style of play that the Lightning have is very dependent on a very strong defensive core and a Vezina winning goaltender, which the Red Wings most definitely do not have on either side, on either part. You have to change. What is this team strong at? Play into those strengths. Stop trying to force this team into playing a game that isn't benefiting them. I think and this team is playing really poorly right now, and everything is going bad against them, right, Scotty? But I'm just getting dangerously close to start really questioning the coaching. And I've been very lenient on it. I haven't criticized it because I've wanted to give it time. It's a new regime. We're a season and a half in. But a season and a half in, while we saw a step forward last year, now with this recent downfall, we've regressed back to where we were last year. And this team needs to take another considerable step forward, and they haven't done it. So I don't know when is an appropriate time to really question goaltending. That too. But coaching.
Well,
I'm exasperated right now. I'm frustrated. And just something needs to change.
I completely agree. That's kind of how we, I guess, bookend the show, because that's how I started it. So,
yeah. Hey, Kevin Bicker had an assist for Germany's first ever win over Norway. Finland. Apologies, Finland. Yeah. That's pretty cool. They've never beaten Finland in the World Junior Championship. And then just a quick update for you. Sweden plays Germany today by the time you're listening to this. So Kevin Bicker faces Anton Johansson and Axel Sandin Pellikka.
Yeah.
And then the United States plays as well. And that's your opportunity to see goaltender Trey Augustine. So make sure you check those out if you are awake for it. That'd be cool. Any final thoughts, Scotty?
We ball, man.
We ball. I got passionate there at the end, huh?
Yeah. I feel like I've just sound like I'm like half asleep or dead. Like I'm just like so drained, to be honest. I apologize, but
No, that's how I started the show. And then I worked myself up, but I'm always
you did.
capable of doing it.
You did. Respect.
I'll be back with a new episode tomorrow to preview the game against whoever they're playing next. My mind's a blank right now. I just want to go home. I'm already home. Same time, same place. It's your team every day.
Every day.